Shalom, peace and blessings. Welcome to the Fourth Angels Learning Center. And today we are on our Romans chapter study, and we are entering into chapter 9 of Romans. And we are going to break down this chapter, and we're going to see if there's any harmony between the Torah and the prophets and Paul's writings. Is Paul creating a new way of thinking, a new doctrine, or AKA a gospel that's different than the message that's in the Torah and the prophets? Or is he a commentator trying to reiterate and establish a simple understanding of what the Torah and the prophets tried to relay in their time? This is very important for us to grasp, because there's a big confusion going on all over the world right now, and we are trying to unify the idea of what Moses, the prophets, and Paul is writing together. And it is so far clear, very clear, that Paul teaches the Torah and the prophets. We are on chapter 9. I want to let you guys know, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share this video to those who you think it may help. If you want to support the ministry, you can by becoming a member. We definitely appreciate all the support that comes into the ministry. So let's get right into it. We're going to be on chapter 9. We're going to break this down in groups of 11. We're going to read 11 verses. Then we're going to flip back up and we're going to dissect these verses. All right. So let's pull up the scriptures and let's get started. All right. All right. Starting from verse 1, it says, I say the truth in Messiah. I do not lie. My conscience also bearing me witness of the set apart spirit, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart, because I wish that I myself was accursed from Messiah for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites, right? Who are Israelites, to whom pertain the adoption, the glory, the covenants, and the giving of the law, and the service of Elohim, and the promises, whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Messiah came, who is over all, Elohim blessed forever. Amen. Not as though the word of Elohim takes none effect, because they are not all Israel which are of Israel. Neither, because they are the seed of Abraham, are they all children. But in Isaac shall your seed or children be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of Elohim. But the children of the promise are counted not for the seed, right? But the children of the promise are counted for the seed. I'm sorry about that. For this is the word of promise. At this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac. And then verse 11 says, for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or any evil. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of Elohim according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that is called. And I'm going to read verse 12 just to conclude the statement. It is said to her that the elder shall serve the younger. This is what was said to Rebekah when she was conceiving, when she conceived Esau and Jacob. So let's dissect a few things that we want to make sure it's understood here. Paul here is definitely talking in grievance, right? He's talking in sorrow in his heart for the people, for his family, according to the flesh, right? Meaning everyone who he's related to, the Israelites, right? It says here, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites. That means he's talking pertaining to everyone that he's related to. Everyone that's under the same father and great-grandfather and forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which he goes into discussing. All right. So it says here, this characteristic, I just want to show this. This characteristic is interesting that he says, my conscience also bears witness in the set apart spirit that I have heaviness and sorrow in heart. And then he makes a statement saying, I wish that I was accursed from Messiah for my brethren. When this has happened before, this example of the Ruach has been from the past in the prophets, especially Moses specifically. Him being filled with the Ruach, of course. And yes, he was filled with the Ruach because in Numbers chapter 11, Yah took the spirit or the Ruach that was on him, meaning that the Ruach, the spirit was on him, and took that spirit and put it on the 70 elders. So he did have the spirit in him, and that was the spirit that was given to the elders. Looking at Exodus chapter 32, listen to this statement. It is similar to what Paul is saying here about his family or his kinsmen according to the flesh. Now, of course, all of these people are related because the 12 tribes of Israel were all brothers, and each tribe they were all cousins in a sense. They were all related. And it says here in verse 32 of Exodus 32, it says, yet now, if you will forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I beg you, out of your book as you have written. And Yahuwah said to Moses, whosoever have sinned against me, him will I blot out my book. So we have here Moses interceding, asking Yah to forgive them of their sin, and not only asking them to forgive them of their sin, but saying if he does not want to forgive them of their sin, to blot him out instead for their forgiveness. He was trying to sacrifice himself for the children of Israel. And Yah says that's not how it works, especially considering that Moses himself is also in need of salvation as well. He is also in need of a savior from his sins as well. So we're looking at verse 3, we can see that this Ruach, this set apart spirit, is also inspiring a grievance or a desire for Paul to have towards his own people as well, which is the same people that Moses is referring to as well. All right. Now, interesting thing enough is talking about, it says who the Israelites, right? And then it says to whom pertain the adoption. Now, there's a lot of conversation about the adoption that we just read earlier in Romans chapter 8, as well as the adoption that you see in Galatians. And many people pertain the adoption to the nations, or what they refer to as the Gentiles. And it's interesting to see how this adoption was first initially given to the Israelites. So the whole idea of being with Yah, or being in darkness and now being in light, or being separated from Yah and now being reconciled or atoned, is referred to as the adoption. In this adoption, we see everything that correlates with that. We have the glory, the covenants. It says right here, the covenants, the giving of the law is all pertaining to this adoption, okay? As well as the service and the promises. So every single thing that's in this law, the covenants, is pertaining to this adoption that he gave to the Israelites first. All right, there's not two different adoptions. He doesn't give the Israelites an adoption and then give the nations an adoption. That's not how it works. And we're going to see as Romans progress, we're going to see later on that this is actually one aspect of adoption, one aspect of a covenant that everyone has to enter into or be cut out of. Just want to make mention as well. It says here that the Israelites, whom all these things pertain to, including their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it says, of whom concerning the flesh Messiah came, meaning that Messiah came for his people as well. Like he came for his people. And we have these statements that Messiah made as an emphasis of that as well. Let's look at some statements. Matthew chapter 15, looking at verse 24. And it says here, he answered and said to them, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The lost sheep of the house of Israel. He was not talking to only the 10 tribes. He was also talking to the children of Judah, who he was interacting with frequently already. He He was not sent but to the lost sheep of Israel. This was his perspective. This was his desire, and this was his primary approach when he came. He had a mission, a specific mission that was not going to be carried out after he was completed it. His disciples were not going to deal with the sacrifices. His disciples were not going to fulfill the temple and the priest services. And his disciples were not going to fulfill the covenant of David's son sitting on the throne, nor was the disciples going to fulfill the promises made to Abraham pertaining to him being a father of many nations. There were so many things that he had to deal with that centered around Israel and Israel alone because of the promises that was made specifically to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he had to come to accomplish those very specific covenants or agreements that Yah made with the forefathers of Israel. And this is what Romans chapter 9 is talking about, being children of Israel, children of Abraham. It talks about Rebekah. It's going down a line of a literal interaction and a literal covenant and agreement between him and literal forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and how that relationship affects everyone else afterwards. All right. This is not something to be erased. This is not something to be ignored. This has to be understood in order to understand everything else. If you read the Old Testament, you cannot spiritualize everything, or I would say mystify everything to pertain to you as a believer. No, you have to understand that he was talking about many different aspects, believer and relation, literal children. If you desire for Yah to approach your children, then you have to also understand that the covenant is not only between him and you and other believers, but also you and your seed, your children that may not even be believers at the time. When he enters into a covenant with you, he's also promising you that he will love and approach your children. This is how he approached the forefathers. When Abraham died, he approached Isaac, let him know that he was the deity, the Elohim, the mighty one of Abraham, his father. And then he did the same thing to Jacob when he went to Bethel on his way to Syria to see Laban. He approached Jacob and said he is the Elohim of Isaac, of Abraham and Isaac, and he offered a covenant to him, to the child of Isaac. And this is what we ought to understand about Yah and how he approaches things. He will fulfill his portion of the covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by approaching this people and calling them to repent, calling them to enter into a covenant. They're not automatically in a covenant because their fathers were. So this is Messiah's approach. Messiah came and he was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel, which would have been all 12 tribes. All 12 tribes were not lost in location, lost in spirituality, lost in relationship to Yah. They were separated from Yah. Let's look at another verse. John chapter 4, looking at 21 and 22. It says this, Yahushua said unto her, Woman, believe me that the hour come when you shall neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know, and we know what we worship. Salvation is of the Yahudim. Yeah, meaning that he is from the tribe of Judah. Salvation comes out of the Jews. It comes out from Judah. This is what the prophecies say. Micah chapter 5, verse, is it chapter 5, verse 2? Let's check it out. Micah chapter 5, verse 2 indicates where the salvation and the ruler comes from. It says here, but you, Bethlehem Ephratah, this is the land that was owned by Judah. You be little among the thousands of Judah, right, the Yahudim, yet out of you shall come forth unto me that is to be a ruler in Israel. You see that? So the ruler, the king, salvation, wisdom, strength, authority is coming out of Judah. And this is what he's relaying to the Samaritan woman. Now, here's an interesting aspect about the Samaritan woman. The Samaritan woman is actually a woman that is mixed. All right. She is mixed with the Assyrians, but she is half Israelite, half Assyrian. And you can tell because it says right here, verse 19 and 20, the woman said, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. So she said that our fathers worshipped on this mountain. Prior to that, I want to point out something very important that she says as well about her father as well. She said right here in verse 11, the woman said to her, Sir, you don't have anything to draw with, and the well is deep. From where do you have this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? So the Samaritan woman was talking about her relation to Jacob. She was not an Assyrian. She was not a person from a different nation. She was a mixed person, and her forefather was Jacob, and the well was dug by her forefather, and she always remembered that. She approached it that way. Now, Yahushua said that there's going to be a time when nobody's going to worship on this mountain, nor are they going to worship on Jerusalem. Okay? They're not going to be in Bethel, nor are they going to worship in Jerusalem. Worship the Father. See that? Worship the Father. You don't worship what you know, but we know what we worship, for salvation is coming out from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and it now is, that the true worshipers shall worship the Father, yahuah, with in spirit and in truth, and the Father is looking for such to worship him in that manner. Okay? So again, we see a very specific approach that Yah has taken, that Yahushua was taken, rather, in his mission. When he was sent here, he was sent for the children of Israel. So we have here Paul addressing the children of Israel. We have Paul desiring his kinsmen according to the flesh to repent, to come to Yah, to not be lost anymore, right? He talks about the history of how Yah gave them a culture based off of his Torah, his covenants, his services, his promises, the demonstrations at the temple. He gave them a culture, and he's telling them that they are lost from this culture. Right? Let's continue to look at this. So Messiah, also being an Israelite, also desiring his kinsmen according to the flesh first. He was sent to his kinsmen first. Unfortunately, it was his kinsmen of Judah that betrayed him. Even the man Judah betrayed him, but with a kiss, and gave him to the nations to do whatever they wanted with him. So definitely a heartbreaking time to see the condition. Now, let's look at verse 6 to 8. I want us to focus on that. So before we do that, I want to read it again, because we were talking about the Israelites concerning the flesh. Messiah came for those who was related to him. That's what it means. Of whom, as concerning the flesh, Messiah came. Of them whom Messiah was related to, Messiah came for them. He came for his relatives. Okay? Now, there was much more of a mission afterwards, which we see clearly that his particular mission was to come to his flesh, to come to his kinsmen. Right? Verse 6, it says, not as though the word of Elohim is of none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. What is he talking about? Is he talking about the people? Yes. Is Israel referring to the people? No. They, right here, where he says, for they, he's talking about the people collectively. They are not all Israel, right? Which are of Israel. He's talking about the man. They are not all the people of Israel, which is from the man Israel, or which are of the man Israel. Then he continues this notion that just because everybody is calling themselves Israelites, they are not all considered Israel to Yah just because they are born from the man Israel. This statement is also continued. Neither because they are the children of Abraham are they all children. You see that? Just because they're related to the man Abraham does not make them his children. And we know that for a fact. We know that for a fact. Messiah reiterates that It says here, but in Isaac shall your seed be called. That is, now watch this. They that are children of the flesh. Remember, we were talking about that. Just because they are children that are related together, these are not the children of Elohim. The children of Elohim is not necessarily individuals who are related together, but the children of the promise, meaning the children who have accepted by faith the things that Yah has promised, are counted for the children. They are counted as the children. For this is the word of promise. At this time I will come, and you shall have a son. So the experiences that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob having through faith, it's what's causing them to be connected to Yah. Remember, it says Abraham believed and it was counted to him for righteousness. It was because of Jacob's faith and cleaving to Yah that his name was changed from Jacob to Israel. So this is what it's saying. The experiences that the forefathers have had is what made them who they are in Yah, is what made them connected to Yah. And we're going to look at a few things, right? But there's one thing I want to point out real quick is where it talks about Abraham, and it says, neither because they are of the seed of Abraham are they the children, but in Isaac shall your seed be called. It says, they which are of the children of the flesh, these are not the children of Elohim. Let's look at an example of what Messiah was teaching. Is Paul teaching the same thing that Messiah was teaching? Let's look at John chapter 8. John chapter 8, Messiah comes in contact with some people, and they claim to be related to someone. Let's look at that. Let's start at verse 31. Yahushua to the Jews which believed on him, it says, then said Yahushua to those Jews which believed on him. It says, if you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed. If you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And they answered him, and they said, we be Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How are you saying that you shall be made free? You see that? We are Abraham's children, and we were not in bondage to any man. Look at verse 34. Yahushua answered them and said, verily I say to you, whosoever commits sin is the servant of sin. The servant abides not in a house forever, but the son abides forever, meaning the servant doesn't stay in a house. The child of the owner of the house stays in the house. It says, if the son therefore make you free, you shall be free indeed. And look at what he declares. He says, I know that you are Abraham's seed, Abraham's children, but you are trying to kill me because my word has no place in you. I speak that which I have seen of my father, and you do that which you have seen of your father. Is he saying that you're doing what Abraham is doing? Absolutely not. They said, Abraham is our father. And Yahushua said, if you were Abraham's children. Now he's casting doubt on the possibility that these people are Abraham's children according to Yah's eyes. Now they are related to Abraham. This is what Messiah said, that they are related to Abraham. But now he's saying, if you were Abraham's children, then you would do the actions. Your actions would declare or reveal that you are Abraham's children. And then he says here in verse 44, you are of your father, the devil. So Messiah makes it very clear about how to be related to Abraham. Now, he's not saying that that's the only way. You can be related to him by blood, but you are not connected to his promises if you are outside of the realm of faith. This is what he's saying. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20. Leviticus chapter 20, looking at verse 3, it says, I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people, because he have given to his seed unto Molech to defile my sanctuary, to profane my holy name. So a person that is in Israel will be cut off from his people. cut off from among his people. That means that he will no longer to Yah be considered Israel or his people Israel or the children of Israel. Now remember this, his promises is made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he is fulfilling a promise that he is given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, aka Israel. And if you are cut off from among those people, he is no longer going to be obligated to fulfill any promise towards the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob if those children is not lining themselves up with the same promises or the same belief that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had. If they are outside of that belief and they are doing other things, then Yah will not fulfill his promise to them according to the promise he made to their fathers. Let me see if I can find this verse. I think it's in Leviticus 26. Let me see. Leviticus 26 talks about this through this whole chapter, but I'm looking for it. There we go. Verse 21. Look at what it says here, guys. It says, if you walk contrary to me and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. So this is contrary to what he promised them. All right. It says, if you will not be reformed by me, by these things, but will walk contrary to me, this is verse 23, then I will also walk contrary to you. If you walk contrary to me, I will walk contrary to you. So let's go back to what it says in Romans, because there's many people out there today that believe that he's going to fulfill this unconditional covenant towards Israel. And even though they do not believe he's going to fulfill this covenant, this is not true. It says very clearly, they are not all Israel which are of Israel, neither because they are related children of Abraham, that they are all considered children of Abraham. Messiah made it clear. Moses made it clear in Leviticus. This same thought is extremely consistent throughout. Paul is not coming up with this out of the air. Okay, he's not coming up with this idea out of the air. So now we understand the same thing works for Abraham, Isaac, which we see here, Isaac, as well as Jacob, which he refers to as Israel here. Okay, we're going to talk about Jacob and Esau a little bit, and we're going to get some clarity. So let's start here. One of the promises gave to Rebekah was that the elder shall serve the younger from within the womb, not because someone was evil, but because one was elected by Yah to be this forefather. He was elected by Yah for a reason as well. For a very important reason. It's a pattern that Yah wants to set historically. All right, that it seems to be always a second, right? You have the first earth, then you have the flood, and now you have salvation coming through the second, right? That there's a second. We also had the first Adam, and then now we have the promise in Genesis 3:15 of the seed that's going to come and crush the head of the serpent. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 refers to him as the second Adam. So I'm sorry, not 1 Corinthians. Is either 1 Corinthians chapter 15 or Romans chapter 5 that refers to him as the second Adam. Okay, so we constantly see like the second aspect being emphasized. Okay, we have the us being born, and then it talks about being born again the second time. There's also a reference of this second aspect. You guys could take a look at it. It's in the book of Exodus, referring to Joseph's sons, where he presented Manasseh and Ephraim to Jacob. And instead of him blessing Manasseh as the oldest, he blessed Ephraim as the oldest. So we see that Ephraim, being the second born, was blessed to be over the firstborn, which was Manasseh. And then when Joseph tried to correct that, Jacob said, I know he's the oldest, like as if there was a purpose and a reason for him blessing the second. So we see this election done manifested many different times. We have the elder shall serve the younger. Matter of fact, if you go to the book of Jeremiah, you'll see that the 10 tribes of Israel is referred to as the older sister of Judah, the younger sister. And we see that the older sister, the 10 tribes, is going to serve the younger sister, Judah. So let's continue to read this. All right, we're going to read to verse 22. It says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau I have hated. I want to clarify. We understand, according to, if you understand so far, the word love is a verb, and the word love is a manifestation. It's a manifestation of actions. It's things that Yah does in order to manifest love towards you. And then there's this idea of hatred. Now look at this. He also says, those who love me keep my commandments, and that he will visit the transgressions of his law to those who hate him, right? So love is an aspect of basically manifestation of care, compassion, help, and things like that. Now hate is G3404, and it says this: to love less. It means not to display the blessings, and now there are blessings given to those who, even Esau himself, even though he wasn't given Canaan, he was given Mount Seir for him and his people. Even though he was blessed a certain way, he told Israel not to hate Esau because that was his brother. So it says here, love less, meaning to actually not be pleased with, but still, there's still an extension. There's still an extension of love. Or I would say Messiah made it clear that the sun shines on the wicked and the righteous, the rain falls on the wicked and the righteous, So there's certain fundamental aspects that fall on both, but there's an overflow that pours out on the righteous rather than the wicked. And this is who Esau is representing here. So let's continue to read. It says, what shall I say then? Is there unrighteousness with Elohim? Elohim forbid. He says to Moses, again, looking at Torah, again, Paul is quoting Torah, I will have mercy on him who I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. It says, so then is it not him that wills, nor of him that runs, but Elohim that shows mercy? For the scripture says unto Pharaoh, this is again in the book of Exodus, even for the self-same purpose have I raised you up, that I may show my power in you, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore, therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will harden, and whom he will harden. It says here, you will say unto me, why does he yet find fault? How is he, if he's hardening their heart purposefully, how is he finding fault to them? And it says, for who have resisted his will? It says, nay, O man, who are you to reply against Elohim? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why have you formed me this way? Why have you made me this way? Have not the potter power over the clay in the same lump to make one vessel unto honor, another to dishonor? What if, now here's a hypothetical, what if, willing to show his wrath to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? All right. So what if? Now, many times people are a little bit confused with applying all of these statements as definite doctrinal understandings, right? Saying that this is the way scripture teaches Yah is doing things, that Yah is acting these things out and doing these things. He is responding to a question. The question is, what shall we say? Why does he find fault? For who have resisted his will, right? Now, the question is because of people. Now, remember, this is a letter to the Romans. So he's addressing the concerns of the people in Rome. And one of those concerns is Yah is doing things unjustly. He's doing things for the wrong reasons, and the things that he's doing there's things that's not called for. So he's saying, why is he doing these things? if he is doing these things against people, but then people can't resist his will, he's making people dishonorable. First thing that Paul addresses is, even if he's doing these things, right? It says here, even if he's doing these things, who are you? Who are you to question what it says? Who are you to question him? If you believe him that he is, then if you see these things, it's not to look at these things, get discouraged, and start running away. It's for you to acknowledge, if he's already proven himself to be a Elohim to you, if he's already proven himself to exist to you, then to lose faith from that because of your own questions will be self-righteousness. It will be you elevating yourself over your creator and initially causing you to lose faith and start worshiping and following yourself. So Paul is addressing this mindset first. He's not saying that this is what Yah is doing. He's saying, what if Yah did do this for this purpose? Who are you to be asking these questions? So the first aspect I want to show also is that he does things by election. Just because he chose Jacob over Esau or chose Isaac over Ishmael does not mean that now Ishmael has to be wicked or that Esau has to be wicked. You understand? That's not what he's saying. Because if you look at the story of Jacob and Esau, both of them were performing wicked acts. One was performing an act of deception, and one was performing a careless act of what Yah gave him. Yah gave him he was the firstborn. He was given power. He was given authority. He was also given inheritance that he squandered away. He was also given a birthright that he squandered away. And then Jacob, desiring that birthright for himself, to live in that birthright and that responsibility, he decided to take that away by deception. Same thing with Ishmael. Abraham being promised that he was going to have a son, but then trying to attempt to obtain that son by his own actions, and then being with Hagar, produce Ishmael, and Yah said, this is not how I was going to give you a son. You see what I'm saying? So this is how these things happen, not because Yah made someone evil. That's not how it works. So Paul is not saying that this is how Yah is doing things. He's saying, why are you questioning someone who created you? Find out what it actually is. Don't linger on your misunderstanding and then put all of this stuff on Yah. Yah is not unjust. And that's the first statement that it says right here. Let me go up there. Right here. It says, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with Elohim? Elohim forbid. You see that? Forbid. And then he breaks this down. To make somebody evil just because, to make somebody over someone else just because, is partiality. This is not why he's doing that. He's elected one of them, and the other decided to act in rebellion. This is just like Cain and Abel. Abel was righteous, and Cain responded with his flesh rather than his with righteousness. Okay? All right, so let's move forward. So he's talking about the vessels of honor and dishonor. There's one aspect that I wanted to show you also. Let me see if I can point that out real quick. I showed you that hatred means to love less, means that even though Esau receives a blessing, because we see that Isaac still blessed Esau, but also Yah blessed Esau by giving him land, but just not the promised land. But his actions is what removed him from the outpouring of the blessings of Yah, or the manifestation of the love of Yah, right? Which is his attention, right? You are the apple of his eye. If you are wicked, then you will be cut off from among your people. We read that in Leviticus chapter 20. So let's look at a few examples of this supposed hatred so we could understand that he's not causing you to be hated by himself. Like, it's crazy that he made you so he can hate you. That is a horrible perception to have of the one that you believe created. This is why many people go from believing to unbelieving, because they have these misunderstandings, and then they elaborate on those things with their human logic. So look at what it says here. Deuteronomy 24:15. It says, if a man have two wives, but one beloved, one hated, It says they have borne him children, but both the beloved and the hated. If the firstborn son be hers, that was hated. Then it shall be that when he makes his sons to inherit that which he hath, that he have not to make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son that was hated, which is indeed the firstborn. So he's basically saying in verse 17, he shall acknowledge the son that is hated for the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has. For he is the beginning of his strength. The right hand of the firstborn is his. So he is basically saying that he needs to be righteous in his delegation of who should receive what. That just because you love one more than the other, now it doesn't mean that you hate the other one, meaning you despise one of the wives. It just means that you prefer one over the other. He says, if you prefer one over the other, then you still need to honor the one's children that you prefer less. And we see that with Leah and Rachel. It wasn't that Jacob hated Leah, but they refer to him hating Leah because Leah was loved less. She got less attention. She was less desired. It didn't mean that he despised her. It just means that he desired her less. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24, it says this. It says, he that spares his rod hates his son. You see that? So it's not saying that you literally despise your son. It's saying that you are refraining. You are restraining that which is right from your son, which is in this case, discipline. He that loves him chastens him diligently. So if you love him, you won't withhold or refrain from giving him what's needed, which is discipline at times. But if you withhold discipline from your son and say, oh, I love my son so much, I don't want to discipline him, you are actually hating him. This is what the idea of hatred is. So when it says that Yah hates Esau, it means that he is, because of the sins that Esau is committing, he is refraining from pouring out blessings on him. And this is what it means. Okay, this is a consistent pattern. You see this constantly. It even talks about those who hate yahuah. It's not a matter if you do evil things, but if you refrain from keeping his commandments, if you don't kill, steal, and do all of those things, but you just don't do what Yah says, this is also considered hating because you are refraining or refraining from giving Yah that submission that he deserves, actually. So I hope this helps understand this idea of hatred, or I would consider you understanding Yah's hatred. Yah's hatred is just like his jealousy is just. It's not like man's hatred and man's jealousy. All right, so there's another aspect, Pharaoh aspect, verse 17. So it says here, this is an interesting statement here because many people think that he raised him up so that way he can destroy him. No, it says here, this is time, this same purpose have I raised you up, right? He elevated and magnified the Pharaoh's position that I might show my power. And it says this, in you, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. In you. So the power to be manifested in you. Let's look at a few instances in which Yah manifested or raised up a Pharaoh to show his power in that Pharaoh. Let's go to Chronicles to see Israelite history, to look at what the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is doing. Looking at verse 20. Now watch this. Verse 20 says, after all this, when Josiah prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, came up to fight against Carchemish by Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. Right? I'm going to take this to Kings because Kings breaks this down a little bit more. We're going to go to 2 Kings. We're going to go to 2 Kings chapter 23. It's going to continue the same story. Kings and Chronicles are the same, but there's a little bit more detail in, sometimes there's more details in Kings, sometimes there's more details in Chronicles. So let's look at Kings, 2 Kings 23, looking at verse 29. Look at what it says. It doesn't just call him King Necho. Look at what it says. And in his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him, and he slew him at Megiddo when he had seen him. Who slew who? Did Josiah slow Necho? Nope. It says his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his own tomb. And then it says the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in his father's place. It was Josiah that got killed. Josiah got killed by the Necho, the king. Now let's see why Josiah got killed. Josiah got killed because he did not listen. Let's look at that. Let's go back to Chronicles. 2 Chronicles chapter 35. Let's go back to there. Now listen to what Necho says to Josiah to make him kind of back off a little bit. So Josiah sent messengers, ambassadors, representatives. He says, what have I to do with you, king of Judah? This is the messengers coming from Necho to Josiah, because Josiah tried to intervene with the battle between Pharaoh and the king of Syria. So he sent messengers to Josiah and said, I did not come against you, right? It says, I come not against you this day, but against the house wherewith I war. Look what he says. For Elohim commanded me to make haste, forbear you from meddling, right? Stop yourself from meddling with Elohim, who is with me, that he destroy you not. So I need to make this clear. So we see clearly, right? The king of Judah, Josiah, one of the greatest kings recorded in Israelite history, is being killed by the Pharaoh of Egypt, not simply because he was killed, but because Elohim was with the Pharaoh. Elohim commanded the Pharaoh, and he rose up the Pharaoh of Egypt so he can declare the power of Yah in the Pharaoh. Josiah decided to step in between and intervene, and he was moved out of the way by Yah. So when you look at Romans, it is very clear that it's not just that Yah raised him up to, it's not that Yah raised him up to destroy him. He didn't intend for him not to listen, but it was him, it was Pharaoh that hardened his own heart against what Yah was doing, and this is why he was destroyed with the plagues. Now, let's go down, and then we're going to read the rest of these verses, finish this up. Where are we? Okay. Okay. Verse 23. It says that he might be known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he had prepared unto glory. Now, we talked in when we went over chapter 8, we talked about predestination. We looked at it in the book of Ephesians as well. We knew that it was the plan that Yah had that was the predestined. It wasn't the people that was predestined. It says here in verse 27, it says, even us, whom he have called, not of the Yahudim or the Jews only, but also of the nations. As he said in OC, and that word OC is referring to the prophet Hosea, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. See that? He's showing a contrast between Jacob and Esau, the people of Yah, and those who were not related to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's saying those who were not my people. So those who were not of the children of Israel will be my people, and those who were not beloved shall those who and her beloved shall not be beloved. So the love that was pouring out on Israel will be refrained and given to a people that wasn't his people. He's going to show love to people that was not his people, but those people will initially submit to his direction. It says, it shall come to pass that in the place where it has been said to them, you are not my people, there shall they be called the children of the living Elohim. The prophet Isaiah cries concerning Israel, saying, though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved, meaning that there's a remaining amount that will be delivered. It's not that everyone will be delivered, but a remaining amount, meaning those who believe will be delivered. Those who do not will be cut off from Israel. Just because you're related to Abraham don't mean that you're going to be saved. Just because you're related to Israel don't mean you're going to receive the love that Israel gets for belief. It says, for he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the master make upon the earth. As Isaiah said before, except the master of the armies. This word Shabbat is not Shabbat. It's not the same as Sabbath. It means armies. The master of armies had left us a child or children or remaining amount of children. We have been a Sodom, or even been like some more. If he did not leave us a remaining, the master of our families, if he didn't leave us some children, then we would have been like Sodom and Gomorrah, destitute, dry, without anything left. Let's finish the rest of this. What shall we say then? That the nations which follow not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is by faith. But Israel, which followed after the law of righteousness, have not attained the law of righteousness. How? How did they not receive righteousness? Because they did not seek it by faith, but as it were by the works of their law of the law. They stumbled at the stumbling stone. As it is written, this is in the book of Isaiah, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone, a rock of offense, and whoever believes on him shall not be ashamed. So again, this is very important for us to understand. And we're going to look at a little bit about what they did, right? So it says here, but as were of the works of the law. We touched on this in the very beginning chapters of Romans, that they were not looking at the law by faith. It says here that they were not looking at the law by faith. And because they were not looking at the law by faith, they did not keep it properly. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 5, looking at verse 29. 29, it says, oh, that there were, well, let's first look at what it says here in verse 28. It says, Yahuwah heard the voice of your words, which you spake to me, and Yahuwah said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people, which they have spoken to you. They have well said all that they have spoken, right? They said, this is what they said. All that Yahuwah our Elohim shall speak to you, we will hear it and do it. This is what they said, and Yah said that they're speaking good. Their words are great. But it says here in verse 29 something very important. Oh, that there was such a heart in them that they would fear me and keep my commandments always, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. See, their heart was the issue. They were worshiping him with their lips, but their heart was far from them. This is why in Deuteronomy 30, he asked this very specific question, statement. Yahuwah your Elohim will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children. Why? What would that cause? It says the love of Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, to love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, that you may live. Very important for us to grasp. Romans chapter 9 is not an emphasis on him calling the other 10 tribes in. No, he's looking at all 12 tribes. And he's showing you what all 12 tribes have done. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. In the beginning portion of Romans chapter 10, he concludes the matter of how Israel was punished and how the nations entered in belief, according to the prophet Hosea. It says here, I bear them record that they have zeal of Elohim, but not according to knowledge, because they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness and going about to what? Establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. There's another verse also in the book of Hebrews, chapter 4, that shows us that the good news or the gospel, it says, for unto us was the gospel preached. And then it says, as well as unto them. But what was the problem? It says here that the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. So it's very important that we understand Israel, children of Israel, children of Jacob, children of Abraham, children of Isaac, literal children of Isaac, literal children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were cut off from among their people, meaning that they were no longer considered the people of Israel, because Yah is going to refrain from pouring out his love on them. And this is only because of their lack of faith, and their lack of faith developed into disobedience. And because of their disobedience and lack of faith, they were separated from Yah's people. And not only separated from Yah's people, separated from the promises as well as the blessings. So we have to understand that you being related to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the only blessing that comes from that at this time is the fact that Yah is going to keep a promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and call you to repent, to enter into a covenant in which you will go on a path that Yah has made for us long time ago, years ago, before the foundation of the world. But if you stay in unbelief, it will manifest into disobedience. And that disobedience will cause you to be cut off from the promises that was made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it won't matter if you're related to them. It only matters if you walk according to the ways of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by faith, that you will be a receiver of the inheritance of that blessing and promise. So I hope that this was clear. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I hope that you guys enjoyed this study. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, as well as if you desire to support the ministry, you can either support us on 4lc.com or you could join the membership on YouTube. Either way, you'll be fine, and we appreciate all the support. I look forward to the next study with you guys. Shalom, everyone.